Microphone check.
Right, good evening, everybody. It is 6 and time for us to start. So welcome to everybody, members of the public and councillors. As is usual, I'll run you through action, event, or emergency, apart from the obvious of follow us. There are no practice alarms planned for this evening, but if an alarm sounds, please evacuate the town hall by going down the main staircase or the back staircase to the High Street, and then to the car park behind the town hall in St Runwald Street. This meeting is being streamed live over the internet on the council's YouTube channel. It will also be available to listen to afterwards. Use of mobile phones, other devices, including cameras by visitors, is welcomed. You're requested to use them discreetly, to set them to silent, and to not use voice or camera flash functions. Speakers, that's us in particular, reminded microphones are used at all times. I'm going to introduce those listening to the work of the council. I'd like to explain that the Cabinet is the main executive body of the council. It's responsible for day-to-day decision-making on all council services, and also makes recommendations to full council on major policy issues and on the council's budget. Cabinet is made up of 8 councillors, each of whom is responsible for a particular range of those services. Let me introduce myself and invite my colleagues to do the same. I'll go to my right. So first of all, my name is Councillor David King, leader of the council.
Councillor Adam Fox, Deputy Leader and Portfolio Holder for Local Economy and Transformation.
I'm Martin Goss. I'm the Portfolio Holder for Neighbourhoods and Waste.
Good evening, Councillor Mark Corey, Portfolio Holder for Resources and Ward Member for Wivenhoe.
Julie Young, Portfolio Holder for Housing and Communities, Greenstead Member.
Councillor Pam Cox, Portfolio Holder for Culture and Heritage and Newtown and Christchurch Ward Councillor.
Richard Clifford, Democratic Services Manager.
Andrew Weavers, Monitoring Officer.
Pam Donnelly, Chief Executive.
Thank you all. I should note that Councillor Steph Nissen is unwell and unable to join us this evening. The Councillor Andrea Luxford Vaughan is caught up in what seemed fairly horrendous jams across Colchester and will be with us shortly. It's been a difficult evening for everybody travelling, so thank you everybody for making it. And a welcome to colleagues one row back. Okay, so to the agenda, urgent items.
None, Chairman.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. I invite Cabinet members to declare any relevant interests. Mark.
A recent new interest, Chair of North East Essex Alliance, and I just think that's appropriate to mention when talking about items on the agenda tonight with disposal of land.
Thank you, Councillor Corey, and congratulations on your appointment as the new chair. That's a significant thing. Item 4, minutes. I invite the Cabinet to approve the minutes of the meeting of the 12th of October.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. In which case we're on to item 5, have your say, and I have Sir Bob, first of all, Please, Sir Bob, you know this form well.
Thank you, Chairman. The matter I wanted to talk to mainly was what I think is civic pride and a snub to Colchester, but I shall come on to that in a minute. The first thing is to say the council, and indeed all local councils, are facing the worst financial crisis that I've known, and I suspect ever in local government. And while much of it is due to the financial management of central government, have to accept the worldwide affairs, and therefore for the borough council, all local councils, the challenges are going to be significantly greater than we've ever known. And in that context, I think symbolism is going to play its part as well. And I would just observe that if the council's short of money, and it is, spending £13,000 on planting 4 trees in rusty looking metal boxes and plonking them on the pavement North Station Road, waste of money at any time. But in a time of financial crisis, I don't see how that can be justified. And bearing in mind the £80,000 was not spent on that ludicrous rusty elephant structure on the Albert Roundabout, then it should be quite easy to save 13,000 and not proceed in that direction. I would like to think that all councillors would wish to be involved in the struggles ahead, but it's a bit difficult for me to come out with my usual plea to involve all councillors when I notice that none of those from the excluded party are here this evening. So they're not helping my cause. The point of snub civic pride is that next week, a week today, Colchester becomes a city. But Greater Anglia Railways, which is state-owned, albeit the state being the Netherlands, are refusing to change the name of Colchester Town to Colchester City on the basis they can't afford it. Well, they're getting a lot of taxpayers, British taxpayers' money, and a lot of money from the British government, therefore. And I would ask, and I would also observe, by the way, there was no financial problems when they changed the name, whoever that was, changed the name from Colchester, from St Botolph's to Colchester Town. So I don't know why it's a financial problem now. I would ask that the council make representations, not only to Greater Anglia, but also send a message across to the government in the Netherlands, perhaps even to the Netherlands royal family, because I don't think it is right that Britain's newest city is not being recognised by the railway company whose trains go through Colchester. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Bob. Points well made and understood. I'll take them in the sequence. If colleagues want to add to that, then I'd welcome it. So I won't go into the details of trees and their costings or their contracted or not would be the kind of thing that would interest me. But the principle of us taking care of the public finances, absolutely. We are, and we will, and we're going through things, I can assure you, we'll come back to this just a moment, with real care. So the specific example I don't offer a view on now. If colleagues want, they may. I do think it's important that we improve the approaches to part of the wider conversation that a number of us are having around master planning in the town centre, and then to connection points. You're absolutely right. You can have a discussion about how costly that might be and what counts as good value. But as I say, there's a balance to be struck. But I take the point, and we'll have a look at that. Thank you. In terms of the wider piece about things and the issue that you almost raised, I'll say it for your committee structure, but and the way you put it, involvement of all councillors, I absolutely assure you that the approach we're taking is very much in that spirit. I'll give you a couple of illustrations. We are talking, as you would expect us to senior figures in the other parties beyond, in the Conservative Party, beyond the administration. We're talking inside the administration as well. We're having a very open, do it together because it saves time conversation between senior team, those who serve the senior team and work with them. So there's ideas coming up, and with partners that lies ahead. So there's a real ferment of activity. We're only part of the way through a long haul. We're just ahead. We're talking about this today, the Chief Exec, Adam and I, just ahead of the curve of crisis, frankly, which you touch upon. No one here can remember a time like this. So all we can do is be real about it. Promise the public we'll make the best set of decisions, involve the public, which is why there was that recent survey asking the public their views on what they thought was most important. Some of that's really interesting. We'll publish that. And the relative priority from a public perspective of things on which we spend money. That's going to go into the mix. One last example would be a respect for the seasoned veterans of this particular role. So we've had an alumni session, and I hope to have some more, in which we open up where we are, what we're looking at, what we might be doing, and invite a view. That kind of conversation is genuine and open, and we're doing some learning from it. And it's the best we can do to make this non-political, non-partisan, not having a poke even at government, because some of this crisis is not of their making, some of it, I think we'd have said, might well be. But to find a way together, and we're making real progress. But it is just as you've described, just as you understand, a crisis for which there's no measure or example, but we will keep ahead of that curve, and we will share with the public where we're going. So I hope that addresses at least the spirit of your point. Your last one about snubs and pride. Well, we're a great believer of civic pride. We absolutely should press hard in the ways you've described or otherwise to ensure that destination reflects the city, the name of Colchester. And that's actually in the interest, in my view, our view, of those who want to come here. Travellers may find it helpful to know where they're going to avoid the confusion that follow with a name that doesn't have the same relevance as the city of Colchester. So thank you for raising it. We will pick it up. I'll open up to colleagues. Think anybody else would like to add to that? Of course, you want to come back, please do.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'll watch this space, as they say. I don't know how the public were consulted, as you referred to. I don't know what method. Certainly this member of the public was, I think, oblivious to it, but clearly something happened and that one passed me by.
On that, Sir Bob, I'll send it to you for interest. And the answer was over 1,100 people saw it and responded. So this was a public circulation. We did something similar with all members as well.
Come back on that, if I may. How were the public notified?
In the usual way we do this, Sir Bob, through the media and through our social media by announcement. That's my understanding. And as I say, the fact we had over 1,100 responses suggests we've got, we caught attention. In a busy, fragmented world, we certainly made an effort in a number of the usual channels.
I would observe that sounds like an electronic consultation.
As I look at it, yes, it's not to exclude, it may be done in other ways. And I understand the point you might want to make. It doesn't work for everybody. Yeah, thank you. Jude.
Just on that point, Chair, I think, Sir Bob has highlighted the challenges we face going forward in terms of our financial position. And whilst I hear the point he is making about access to consultations, we do have to make that as cost effective as we possibly can. So I think going forward, we have to rely on the channels that we're currently using to make sure that that is known that's happening. I mean, I know Bob follows the press very closely, but we can't really go back in terms of issuing paper consultations, perhaps like we have in the past, because we need to save as much money as we can.
Thank you, Julie. And that fits also with the ability to take the data. And so Bob, I'll bear in mind your interest and ensure that we circulate widely in several forms the results. But I'll just say this to you, that of course you will understand this completely, that if you have electronically collected data, it's much easier to manipulate, manage and draw conclusions from. So for example, demographic analysis is a lot easier than it is taking 1,100 forms, for example, and trying to interpret them. But no, I do understand absolutely what you touch on. And thank you, Judy, for making absolutely the point about cost and complexity. Thank you very much indeed. Steve Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. Just to support Bob's point about Colchester Town Station, if I may, the nearby bus stop is actually already named Colchester City bus stop. I'd like to, if I may, talk about a sad death of a 2-year-old that was announced in the press, in the media recently, up in Greater Manchester, for poor housing, mould in housing. Of course, that needs to be addressed. I'm not taking away from that at all. But the other half of this equation is the lack of vitamin D. I'm sorry to have to come back to this again, because this should be addressed urgently. I think it was about 8 or 9 years ago, a young girl in East London, she was just 9-year-old, again, dark coloured skin, reflecting the UVB rays from inner city London. She was meters from the South Circular. And she was the first to be announced as dead from a pollution-induced asthma attack. That was big news at the time. And still, we still have not got the sufficient monitoring of people's vitamin D levels, especially among the Black and ethnic communities. Yes, we need to address pollution, like we need to address poor housing and mold issues, but we need to tackle this in a number of ways. As I've said before, the side effects of conventional medications and vaccinations are up to debate. I appreciate that's very controversial at the moment, but the side effects of vitamin D sufficiency is less cancers, less heart disease, less strokes, less mental health issues, less allergies, less inflammatory issues. The list goes on and on and on. The cost benefit analysis of this is incredible. And I was asked by a councillor here last time at the Sustainability and Environment panel, you know, what can the council do about it? I think there is a space for the council to offer at least subsidised vitamin D to those, you know, vulnerable people in poor housing and Black and ethnic minorities. This would save so much longer term costs for social, because it has an effect on behaviour, on depression, on anxiety, and therefore onwards to criminal and unsocial behaviour. Please get back to me on this, and I'm happy to expand on the theories and discuss this and present you with expert evidence. I'm not a doctor. I've just, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And I'm glad we've not talked about vaccinations, because we've had that explained.
I said mine. So.
This is there is fact around vitamin D, but I'll stop and I'll ask colleagues to come in. Julie.
Thanks very much for coming to see us this evening. Yeah, I think, you know, we are strengthening our partnerships with health progressively, and I think the appointment of Laura Taylor Green as the Alliance Director will give us some real insight into the health needs of Colchester residents, and that will be, you know, in its entirety, not focused on one particular issue. I mean, as you're probably aware, as a cabinet, we have prioritised helping those in the most need during this cost of living crisis, and that has included quite a cash injection to Colchester Food Bank that we know is struggling to meet the needs of residents of Colchester at the moment. I too saw the piece on the news this morning around the mould issue and the sad consequences of that child living in a mouldy property. I've been a councillor since 1998, and I have to say that I have not seen any property in, you know, our stock as bad as what, you know, was displayed on the news this morning. I mean, that's nothing to say that our stock is perfect. I know our council workers work really hard to make sure that we address those mould issues, because, you know, I'm concerned like you are, the impact that has on specifically the young and the elderly and those with long-term conditions. But, you know, we hear what you say in terms of vitamin D. I think that there's going to be an awful lot of deficit in terms of people's, you know, ability to get the nutrition standards that they need to keep healthy going forward. But as a cabinet, we're committed to help those individuals as best as we can to ensure that they are well fed and as well fed as they can possibly be. I think Laura Taylor Green needs time to settle in Colchester. And we've got the neighbourhood model that was rolled out in the summer, which should actually, you know, really strengthen what we have on offer in terms of healthcare services in this locality.
Thank you. Mark.
Thank you, David, and thank you for the comments and the thoughtful contributions. I declared earlier that I've just become chair of the Alliance, so I just wanted to take a step back and explain what that was, and Julie's explained some of what is being done by the Alliance. So the Alliance is a collection and a partnership of those who can determine the health of our population and our communities. So it's not just health, it's not just a hospital, because so much happens before, as you've alluded to, that ensures young people into middle age and old age are healthy or not. And we're working to absolutely look at every cause of bad health, bad well-being, and to look for better well-being for our residents, our citizens. And we're doing that across not just Colchester, but tendering too. That's what the Alliance footprint is. And it's just the collection of all of those who are interested in the health of our communities, from us as a council and tendering district council and Essex County Council too, to the health services, community services, and to the voluntary services. And for example, St Helens Hospice and other examples from the third charitable sector. Pam Donnelly, our chief executive, and I have been on this process working together with partners over time. And I thank Pam for her contribution to that, making those partnerships work to the point where it is now an organisation that has its own budget, that invests in the determinants of health. And as I say, I'm now chair of that. Laura Taylor Green is the director of that. And she's actually part employed through the councils and health. So it's a really unique way of bringing budgets together, which has not happened before. And you know that money does make things go round. So if we're pooling those resources, it shows that we mean business. And we are going to tackle those determinants of health. And your point today is one thing that we can take away, and I promise I'll take away, talk to the medical experts about it, who I'm sure will say yes in principle. What can we actually do in practice? What does the research show? What's the best way to do it? And I think we know in Colchester, just today, I driving in and then I walked half the way because of the traffic and just the pollution. We know it's there. We're trying to solve it as a borough council. We need more help from county and national government, but we'll do everything we can for the sake of making our residents happier and healthier. So thanks for your contribution.
Thank you. Thank you very much, both. I really appreciate what Councillor Mark Corrie has just been saying. I think health is so important for life and longevity, and in the end to save money. I think this is a budget winner. So I don't think it's a party political issue. You know, health is so important and we need to get those basics right. But I think for the last 100 years or so, we've been increasing the levels of pollution, which, you know, the immune system has a difficulty in dealing with, but also with that particulate pollution, it blocks the UVB rays getting to our skins. And high-rise building in Manchester and London, again, for smaller people that can't then get the sun on the skin, is so important. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kelly. Steve, thank you. And then we go on to the next item, which is decisions reviewed by the scrutiny panel. The items.
Non-chat.
Okay, item 7. 7.1, new senior management team arrangements and structure. And we have a paper on this. But I'll ask the chief executive to talk to this item.
Thank you, Leader. So I very much welcome what I hope will be an endorsement from Cabinet this evening to the first stage of our resetting of our senior team, brought about by a number of factors which are articulated in the paper. I think in the light of the comments from Sir Bob earlier on, it's important to note that these changes do signal a significant saving right at the top of the organisation, in excess of £200,000, which is welcome. However, it is only the beginning. And although we're looking for endorsement of the senior board this evening, and I'll go on to that in a little bit more detail in a moment, work is already underway looking at our group managers, middle managers, ensuring that they're working in the most efficient and effective way, and recognising that since the pandemic, everything has changed, and some of the groupings that we now have across our organisation don't quite make quite so much sense as they did. So there will be an opportunity to build on that over the coming months. But for now, I'm pleased to recommend, and the appointment process is now complete, the new senior leadership board. There is a reference in Appendix B to the proposed senior team. And just to remind you that a couple of the posts were already substantive posts. My own as chief executive, I was appointed almost a year ago now and took up my appointment in April. And of course, I've been joined by my colleague Lindsay Barker as executive director of the place. But there were some gaps in our arrangements that needed to remedy. So I'm very pleased to announce that we now have 4 new appointments, all from existing members of the senior team. And that in itself, I think, says a couple of things. First of all, we need to make effective use of the resources we've got. And secondly, we have the talent in the organisation that needs to be encouraged to develop and move on, particularly given some of the challenges that we now have to face. So what we now have is a much flatter structure, less hierarchical, more flexible, more responsive, all the things we've been encouraged to do. And that's what we're going to need in order to tackle these very significant challenges going forward. So I'm very pleased to announce that our new Chief Operating Officer is Richard Block, and he has been very ably acting as an interim for a number of weeks since the departure of our Deputy Chief Executive. I'm also pleased to announce that 3 directors have now been appointed: Mandy Jones, Lucy Bredman and Rory Doyle. And in the course of the next week, in fact, next Wednesday, I believe, the senior board will be identifying what the various portfolios will be so that Cabinet have a completely clear line of sight to where the responsible officers are working. So with change brings sometimes losses. And in this case, I'm afraid to announce that our managing director of our Amphora group of companies has decided to take retirement, and that's Paul Smith. So first of all, it's an opportunity this evening to publicly thank Paul for his contribution to a fledgling company, a set of companies 4 years ago. So a big thank you to him. We will miss his experience and guidance. And secondly, to give you some reassurance that on a number of fronts, we're doing our level best to make sure that the risks associated with the departure of a senior member of staff are understood, and that piece of work is already underway. And you may recall that one of the key recommendations from the peer review, which by the way is now published on the website and agreed, was that we should undertake an external and independent review of our Amphora group of companies. I think it's timely anyway. As we know from the brief conversations we've had this evening, everything has changed, including the environment in which those commercial companies operate. So I am really keen to see what the independent assessment of the future for Amphora, and I do think it has a bright future, and I do hope our staff will stick with us and see us through this period of transition. It will highlight where we need to go next and set us on a firm and clear path for the next couple of years, the next 5 years, I hope. So I think that summarises more or less what was in the paper, a significant shift from the rather hierarchical and traditional model we've had in the past, which was right for the past, to a more flexible, responsive model, which we're absolutely going to need in order to meet the challenges of the future. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the senior management team colleagues for their support and their willingness to step up into these new roles. And I look forward to you endorsing the paper this evening. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed, Pam. This has been a real issue of interest for Cabinet, as you'd expect, for anybody listening. There must be some. We have walked up and down this with you, and the responsibility and leadership has absolutely and rightly been yours. You have to own the results of all that review as described in the paper. But Cabinet welcome the shift you've described. We endorse your view that we have pools, reservoirs of real talent, but that's never enough. What we have is an extraordinary work ethic, a real pride in Colchester, a love of this city and its possibilities. And we have the makings of the culture you've described, and real evidence that that is something that at other levels in the management team and beyond, there's a real welcome for the change and a release of energy. We're going to need that as we work our way through the challenges that lie ahead. So my take is this is cracking. We'd love to see money saved and energy released and people getting on with it and having a sense of authority in there is pleasure and satisfaction in work. And as a cabinet, it's our responsibility to work in that same style, to respond to you at the same kind of pace as we demand of you. So you have our commitment, I have mine, and as a team, we'll support that wider team that you've just described and those who work with them. Please pass on our thanks, accept our thanks too, because a huge amount of work lies behind all of this. And you've done it from our perspective, if I can say that, in the right spirit, because you've listened and learned, and you've consulted. You haven't just said, here it is. So you've lived the spirit of the words you've described and the change of culture that you're advocating. I'd like to also, on behalf of Cabinet, endorse absolutely all you've said about Paul T. Smith and the future of the organisation that he's been leading and has some months more to lead. They've done some wonderful things. Several of us were up at the Turnstone project this morning, looking out over Colchester and seeing the fruits of that. It takes strategic patience and ambition to end up with something that, despite all the obstacle, commercial planning turns into fruition. And it's a reminder that if we've got the grit, we can continue to make a real difference to Colchester. And today was just one of those examples. So Cabinet, unless there is a pressing need to add, I hope we've covered in the spirit as well as the detail. And I put to you the recommendations.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Councillor Coy, it's all about you. Sale of land at Northern Gateway, take it away.
Thank you, David. Yes, we were up there earlier overlooking some of this site. So this paper is about the sale of land up at Northern Gateway, approximately 5 hectares off of Axel Way. And I would like to just get in the imagination of the public where that is. If you're coming from Colchester up the Northern Approaches Road or via Urban Romanus, then as if you were going to turn left to the football stadium, at that roundabout, turn right. And it's that corner of land and it's behind the Toyota garage. All other vehicles are available. And that land that then goes to the old rugby club, known as sort of the Mill Road Rugby Club area. So that site has been in our ownership and it is vacant. So we are now developing. It has planning consent for a healthcare campus. And that's what we are agreeing this evening to agree that land passing on for the usage of a health campus. And that includes also homes for 300 older people, social care wrapped in there. And this is something that we've been working on for quite some time. And the disposal of this land is in part A of the report. The financial matters are in part B, but what I can absolutely say to the residents of Colchester is we've got a very good deal. These are big capital receipt coming in and helps fund other projects and actually part funds retrospectively some of the excellent projects up at Northern Gateway, the sports complex that helps the health and well-being of our residents. And this site will all be about health as well. So it will support the health and well-being of our residents and especially those with sort of elderly care needs. What I wanted to explain as well is the finances of this are positive and we need it at this time in order to borrow less on other projects. So that helps with our financing models. And lastly, because this is a healthcare campus which involves both private and public involvement, what we as Cabinet wanted to do was absolutely speak at the earliest possible stage with the NHS and make sure our NHS partners were involved in this process and that they understood what was happening and could have an input. And actually, we brought together lead partners from the NHS Alliance, from the NHS Acute Hospital to talk with us, and you, Leader, were on some of those calls. And actually, we had a letter today from Taylor Green, the Alliance Director, explaining that as an alliance, including the acute hospitals, the NHS was pleased to support the working that had gone on with CoPlan, the developer that we are progressing with, the preferred bidder. And they were developing a workforce strategy together with CoPlan to ensure that there is a minimised risk to existing NHS providers and wider care providers, that the hospital sees a workforce collaboration with whoever's working on that site. So it hopefully will be as positive as possible for healthcare workforce in North Essex and attracts more. And absolutely, we do not want to see any detraction from the NHS. So I just wanted to say, I've got a letter here in front of me that does say they're absolutely incorporated in the process of working with CoPlan, working with us, and they have a statement on workforce that they are agreeing at the moment. So I just wanted to allay any fears for my principles as well, and my interest in it as an Alliance Chair. So, Leader and the rest of the Cabinet, I suggest we have discussed this and we go ahead with the disposal of this site in order to see this healthcare campus come forward and to help our budgets overall and contribute to other investments going forward. Thank you.
Any other observations colleagues need to add? If not, then I would just sort of say I think it has been really thoughtful work. The engagement sometimes took its time, but the effect of that was to gain the assurance that you've had today that we are a crucial partner on side about this and seeing the benefits and working actively to exploit them in terms of training future staff. It's one of the things I know you've been personally involved in. I think that's really great work and great result as described. So a thank you to you and to others. On the basis described, the recommendations here, which give delegated authority to the Executive Director, place in consultation with yourself, Mark, to negotiate terms and conclude, which we want to do at pace, we agree. So recommendations put to you, Cabinet. Agreed? Agreed. Agreed. Councillor Corley, fees and charges, a pleasurable job to talk to.
Thank you. This sets out the fees and charges to be agreed for the next financial year, 23-24. And it also covers some of the pressures within the year. But this is for pressures we're finding ourselves under next year, means we are looking very keenly at our fees and charges, the rising impact of inflation, the stagnation in our economy, and the after effects of COVID together make quite a perfect storm, makes a perfect storm for us as individuals and residents of this borough, but even more as a large organisation that's trying to work across a number of sectors. And we are therefore having to put forward fees and charges that are increased in certain areas because of the inflationary pressures on resources, for example, energy in particular. Sad to say, the impacts on our leisure, for example, and running a fantastic leisure world complex and the other leisure world facilities across the borough. With the energy costs, that is a significant impact, and therefore some of the fees and charges will have to increase there. Sadly, things like the crematorium, the literal increase in energy for the process of cremation means that we have to increase those fees by an inflationary amount. And looking at other impacts across the board, residents understand this pressure upon their finances and likely understand the pressure on ours as a council. We want to keep going to ensure that we provide the basic services, like we were talking about earlier, for the health and well-being of our residents, for the housing, for the waste recycling collections, for the parks and recreations and the culture that we provide in this town. We have to do it. We have to balance the books, and this paper outlines how we balance the books. For those who can afford certain fees and charges, they will increase. For others, we always focus on supporting those who need, the most vulnerable, who need support with fees and charges, and we will continue to do that. Otherwise, leader, I'll leave it there. The paper is quite clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other further comments? Oh, if not, the only point I would add, if I might, Mark, would be just to be really clear for those watching us that these fees do no more than match or fall below current levels of inflation. So this is holding the purchasing power of previous fees, or as I say, where it falls under current rates of inflation, just hit 11%. And all of these numbers, I think, or just about all of them, are below that level or well below that level. This is just trying to hold our purchasing place with one eye on the market. So I think that, as you say, it's in the paper and it's well said by you. Thank you. To respond to the significant budget gap, we proceed with these fees and charge increases to make reasonable increases to help fund and support council services that our residents need. Cabinet, can I have your support?
Agreed.
Thank you. The next item is recommendations from Governance and Audit Committee, and Councillor Smith may want to come forward. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to just raise a few of the points that the committee looked at when they were considering the reviews that they were suffering from. Clearly, a lot has changed, and we've already heard in other speeches this evening about the impacts of inflation. That's a serious impact on many of our projects in the capital programme. The cost of borrowing has risen very considerably, as anyone who's got a mortgage knows. And again, it sets the question, a project that was valid when interest rates were 1%, offering a return of say 3% would be a great idea. That same project when interest rates are 4% is no longer commercially viable. And we need to be ensuring that our capital programme is properly reviewed and looked at in the light of the new circumstances. I appreciate it's not this council's fault that this situation has occurred, but it is a real situation that we are facing. Increased borrowing costs have a major impact on our revenue budget and on the services that we provide to residents. And to ensure that we are doing the very best for our residents in these difficult times, we do think that we need to have a full review of what's in the capital programme to see now what makes sense and what is now affordable and what isn't. I would be very happy if there are any questions on the recommendations we put forward to answer them.
I'll open it to colleagues. I have a view in a moment. Mark.
Just to say thank you really to Paul. Councillor Smith chairs that committee very well and actually meets with finance officers to put forward some of the committee's thoughts and to and some of his own excellent contributions. And we've, both you and I, leader, and others have listened in, have been contributing to some of these discussions at Governance and Audit, and I very much agree with the recommendations, and I have done at committee and I have done publicly in terms of agreeing to the capital programme review, which I know, leader, you have very much been interested in doing. And as a senior team meeting last night, councillors and chief officers were very much committed to this process. We need to do it. We need to do it as a refresh, but because of the increased economic factors, the macroeconomic factors, as you talk about, the mismanagement of our economy. So it's not our mismanagement, but we do have to now manage our programme at an even tighter level. So I take these recommendations. I thank your committee, because they are actually, quite a lot of them have skills and interest in this, and it's really fleshing it out. And I did speak to the chief finance team today, and talked through how we could continue to involve those members, either through committee or at a greater level through this review, because I think it's valuable cross-party to have that that influence. So thank you for chairing it in this way, and I think the recommendations are really worthy. So unless there's any differences to that, I think we can pretty much take them and run with them, because that's the process we've already set in train. There's just some minor comments here that are slightly different, but welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just the briefest of remarks from me, absolutely, just to endorse what's just been said, both your remarks and Councillor Coy Mark's response. And it's about the spirit in which we work again, getting ourselves through an extraordinary, unprecedented challenge, which you as past leader, well placed to judge, is going to require all of us pulling, not fighting. And we earn that respect, cooperation from fellow members if we have a genuinely open approach, which we do. And governance and audit is under your chairmanship, and with the members it's got, the cycle always changes. We've got people with particular interest in this. It is absolutely going to make a contribution, already has, and it's welcomed. I'd add just two things just for the conversation to be rounded. First is that we recognise, we talked about this last night, again, that treasury management is part of this. And so that robust scrub, which will see us seeing the results of review of the whole capital programme, at least in its first blush, towards the end of November, and with conversations to follow on that. Alongside that, we're expecting a really robust look at treasury management. We can't continue to misjudge that and overstate it, because we'll be forecasting spend and therefore borrowing in years when it's not going to happen. It's kind of a logical thing, isn't it? So the robustness of review will include, that's the assurance from the Cabinet and Chief Officer team, and this as far as we're concerned, life may take us down a different course. We'll reset both treasury and programme and borrowing, and provide insight, as we've said, a governance and audit in a way that you and we need, into contingency, into contracted costs, and what the future might bring. And the last thing for me to say is I and we are very focused also on looking at assets. This is the right time to have a look at what we've got, what we hold and what we don't. So thank you, Paul, for your work and the work of your committee. I'd be grateful if you would pass on our thanks to members of the committee, and in whatever form you see or fit, of course, and thank you for coming tonight. We'll accept, subject to colleagues' agreement, recommendations. Colleagues? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader. I would obviously thank you on behalf of the entire committee. I would point out the recommendations were unanimous from the committee, and that we are certainly very keen to play our part in the financial management, doing whatever we can to improve and ensure that as much as possible of the resources that the council's got is used for the benefit of the residents of the borough. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Officer pay policy statement. Mark.
Thank you, Leader. This is something that we are required to do annually, to publish our full officer pay policy statement. So this is for the forthcoming year 2023-24. I thank the officers who have put this together. Jess, who's in the audience, Jess Douglas, thank you for this. And it outlines every employer that's included within Colchester Borough Council, not with our subsidiaries, so not to do with the Colchester commercial holdings or Colchester Borough Homes, but for all staff under the Colchester Borough Council banner. It outlines the different pay levels, and it outlines also our living wage strategy, which has been in place for quite some years now, ensuring that around 300 permanent and casual staff and 50 third-party and contract employees receive the living wage. I actually had a question on Twitter about that today and was able to reassure people that the council has been leading the way for 6, 7, 8 years now. And we're trying to ensure other big employers in the vicinity do it. I hope others such as Essex County Council take up the mantle at some point soon. So we ensure that we have a smaller wage gap between our lowest and our highest earners. And as the policy earlier outlined with the senior management, we're trying to have a flatter hierarchical approach and involve as many people as possible in the management of our great council. So I'll leave it there. It's quite straightforward and answer any questions if I can.
Thank you, colleagues. Pam, please.
Briefly, yes, obviously welcome this report and particularly the focus on the living wage. And there's an event upcoming in town very soon about Colchester as a living wage city. And I think it's really important that that message gets out there. And it will be interesting to talk another time about how far we could, as a council, encourage local employers to adopt a living wage, particularly thinking about upcoming meetings with the ambassadors from the business community and others who may have some interesting thoughts on this to share with us. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Pam. Just on that, we have to lead by example, and that's how you lead. And I think we've had so much going on in politics in the last 5 years or so. We probably haven't been able to lead by example enough. So I welcome Pam's comments and would happily go along to that meeting and try and persuade others to do the same. We introduced a living wage. We then did have a change in government policy where they created a national living wage, which was actually paying less than the living wage. But at least it seemed to convince some people that was acceptable. But the living wage actually gives a proper level of pay that people can just about live on, hence the title. But happy to persuade others as best as we can, leading by example. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure colleagues would endorse that. You know, we wear our heart a bit on our sleeve in that sense, quite rightly, given our politics. So let's just mention that briefly. But this isn't a political difference. Across the chamber, there is a support for this in the past, and I expect it so will be again. So unless there's anything else, colleagues, to add, and point noted about reinforcing with others what we consider to be good practice for good reason, then I put to you the recommended decision, which is to approve and put to full council that they approve and adopt the enclosed statement. Do we agree?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Jess, hurrah. Right, housing and communities is next. Councillor Julie Young.
Thanks very much, Leader. I won't take much time on this. This forms part of our continuing drive to provide additional social housing in Colchester, and it is the phase 3 of Garrick Sites project. July 2020, Cabinet devolved responsibility for the Cabinet Member for Housing to sign off the awards of the contracts because they're over £500,000. And I'm seeking support from the Cabinet to make that decision tonight to expedite the progress of these schemes as quickly as possible, to provide these homes, much needed homes, as quickly as we possibly can. This is a part of our commitment to provide 350 additional social homes in the period of 5 years. So I think these total 23 units. So I'm hoping Cabinet are able to support the recommendation here tonight, Leader.
Thank you very much. In the order I've seen them, Councillor Corey and Councillor Fox.
Thank you. I really support this to continue on building homes for those in need, and that is one of our key aspirations in our strategic plan. So I welcome this paper which sets out the timelines for delivery and delegating to Councillor Young in her portfolio role. I just wanted to raise, because I've spoken to the councillors for Shrub End about Hedge Drive. I think they will be communicating with you further because there are issues around that one, which I know you're aware of. I just wanted to raise that because one of them couldn't get here tonight and wanted to ensure that representation is made. But I know you'll talk with them at length, I'm sure, as the process moves forward, because we all want to see it, and we know there's been issues before with certain sites. It becomes less easy. The further we go along our list of sites. So I know Julie understands that, so I thought I'd just raise it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to reiterate my support for this. I know that people are very concerned about the housing crisis and that we need genuinely affordable houses, and these homes deliver just that. And what they also deliver are homes to Future Homes 2025 standard. And that means that these are homes built with solar panels on the roofs. They're built with heat pumps, and so many residents get upset when they see new homes going up and them not being built to the sorts of standards that we need, the sorts of homes that will need subsequently retrofitting. And I think it's really important for us to make it clear that we're delivering homes that are energy efficient. It means that those residents will have less to pay on their energy bills than existing residents would have to do too, and that, you know, we're leading the way in the borough on environmental and sustainability standards.
If there's no other comments, Julie, are you fine?
Yeah, I'll take away the hedge drive issue. You know, I do understand and know the issues there. All I would say is, you know, we do need to progress with developing these sites because, you know, we have a housing crisis in Colchester and we need to take every opportunity we can to build new homes for people to live in. And as Adam said, you know, rightly said, these are first class, state-of-the-art accommodation, and hopefully will serve to free up larger properties to those people that are under occupying at the moment, which of course helps the whole system. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Young. It's absolutely crucial. It's been well said by you. Thank you, and by our colleagues as well. This is absolutely critical, and pressures we don't talk about other than in the margins of on people's need. Well, here's a truth: the difficult times that are it's starting to engulf the population now, and Colchester will be no different, will add pressure to the whole system. So we have to persevere and do our best where we can. And it's a drop in the wider ocean, but it's a really important one. And we can all take pride in the fact, Adam, as you described it, in the quality of what we're doing. So Cabinet recommend the decision in front of you to delegate authority, portfolio holder and assistant director for place and client services to take this forward. Are we so agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. That gets us through to general items, nomination for Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. In terms of order of service and where we are, Councillor Leslie Scott Boothell from Stanway is the next one in line for Deputy Mayor, and therefore I'd like to propose to Cabinet that we put her name forward for the year for 23-24, and then obviously she will become Mayor in the ensuing year 24-25. So Leslie has long service. She's been a councillor in Stanway since the early 2000s and has been successfully re-elected numerous times with the support of Stanway residents, and I'm sure they'll be absolutely delighted that Stanway and Colchester as a city will be put on the map during her tenure, and I'd like to commend that for endorsement by Cabinet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Very happy to support Leslie's nomination and to show that it's across the parties that we want to support Leslie to be the next Deputy Mayor for Colchester. She does a fantastic job of standing up for her community in Stanway, and has great support there locally. And I know that as Deputy Mayor and then subsequently as Mayor, she'll stand up for the whole of Colchester and do a fantastic job of representing us.
Thank you. That's really well said, and colleagues are nodding with this. It's good, as you say, to make very plain that the way that we proceed as a chamber, as a council members, is to support whoever is on the basis of past service ready for this honour. as a first step towards being there, and it's good to see that tonight. And we have every reason to think that that tradition of cross-party support will continue in this case for Leslie as deputy. So if are there any other further comments? No, then thank you very much indeed. That's the recommendation that we will make to full council. In which case we get to the calendar of meetings. You have a paper. You have reasons for recommendations. And you have recommended decisions. Any comments or views from colleagues so that we do want to linger on this item?
Glad to see my birthday's not a commitment for me, but good. Apart from that, it's great.
We should immediately revise the whole schedule. Councillor Mark.
I just want to take time to thank the Democratic Services team led by Richard Clifford, because they have to herd us as councillors. We're not the easiest crew to manage, and I just think they do an exceptional job, the Democratic Services team, looking after councillors, getting them to meetings, supporting officers and supporting residents to be as helpfully supported to get to meetings as possible. So I thank them for their work.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. There's just an addition, actually. Following.
I take it back.
No, absolutely. But following Richard's excellent report, the 8th of May, of course, is now a public bank holiday coronation, and that's not added into the calendar at this point in time. So we will add that in later.
Prepared to accept that recommendation? We are. No, nobody wants a holiday. Okay, lovely. Let's go out campaigning somewhere. All right. Okay. Oh, that's fantastic news on the coronation. Thank you for breaking that to us, Andrew, tonight. That's very, very, very helpful. All right, members, we agree this, obviously. Thank you very much indeed. And I'll mirror the thanks given. It's only a brief moment of thanks, but it is sincere. We know how many of you spend so many long evenings with us, and there's been an extra pressure this particular year. Now, I'm not sure that's going to go quickly, given the challenges we touched on at the very beginning of this meeting, and since, that's going to roll into the business that we have. Extra cabinet meetings being one illustration, but so thank you for what you do for us all and the residents in turn. Progress or responses to the public.
Thank you, Chair. You have a report in front of you. It shows they've all been dealt with. Thank you.
We love it when we are up to speed. Thank you. That concludes the open business. We then get to the exclusion of the public for good cause as just described, or to be described. Adam.
Thank you very much, Leader. The ultimate role of the Deputy Leader. I move that in accordance with section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, and in accordance with the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements, Meetings and Access to Information England, Regulations 2012, the public, including members of the press, be excluded from the meeting for the following items, as they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972.
Admirably done. Thank you.
Agreed.
Oh, yes, thanks for that. Thank you for the prompt, Richard. We did say there has to be at least one every time we meet.
Chair, we just need to stop